కిరణ్ వచ్చాడు. కిరణ్ జై బాబా. కిరణ్
జై బాబా. జై మామయ్య.
జై బాబా.
సారీ, నా కరెక్షన్ ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఇక్కడ. హాట్మెయిల్ పాస్వర్డ్ చేంజ్ చేశాను.
Shall I start?
Start.
Pawan, will you do the moderation?
Yeah, I can do, bhai.
Okay. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Go ahead, Chanti bhai.
మ్యూట్ చేసుకుందాం.
మ్యూట్ చేద్దాం. అందరూ మ్యూట్ చేస్తే Chanti bhai can go through. Yeah.
The dynamics of spiritual advancement. Spiritual advancement begins when there is a radical change in the outlook of the worldly person. The worldly individual lives mostly for the body. For example, he lives to eat, but he does not eat to live. He has not yet discovered any purpose clearly transcending body. So the body and its comforts become the center of all his pursuits. But when he discovers values in which the soul is predominant, the body is at once relegated to the background. The maintenance of the body then becomes for him merely an instrument for the realization of a higher purpose. His body, which had formerly been a hindrance to the true spiritual life, becomes an instrument for the release of higher self. At this stage, the person attends to his body needs with no special feeling of self-identification, like the driver of a car who fills it with fuel and water so that it may be kept going. Though he may be stirred by the pull of incomprehension and irresistible divine destiny, it may take a long time before he arrives at the mountaintop of the truth realization, and the path is constantly strewn with pitfalls and slippery events. Even if a person has succeeded in scaling great heights, the slightest mistake on his part might cast him down to the very beginning again. Therefore, the aspirant is never safe unless he has the advantage of the help and guidance of a perfect master who knows the ins and outs of the spiritual path, and who cannot only safeguard the aspirant from a possible fall, but lead him to the goal of realization without unnecessary relapses. The aspirant
Chanti, ఏంటి కొన్ని మిస్ అవుతున్నావు ఏంటి? కొన్ని సెంటెన్స్లు మిస్ అవుతున్నావు ఏంటి?
ఏం లేదే, చదువుతున్నా, ఇదే పెట్టుకుని చదువుతున్నా. ఏ సెంటెన్స్?
కొన్ని సెంటెన్స్
he is giving a presentation on that topic. He is not reading.
అని ఇది వేరే, ఇది కాదు, యాజ్ ఇట్ ఈజ్ కాదు. నేను అప్డేట్ చేశాను, ఇంపార్టెంట్ ఇది.
He is giving a presentation.
నా ప్రెజెంటేషన్ అది.
Presentation. Okay.
Presentation.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not reading the discourse. అందులో ఇది ఇంపార్టెంట్ పాయింట్స్ అన్ని రాసుకున్నాను అన్నమాట.
I see. Yeah. స్టార్ట్ చేయడం కాదు, అంతకుముందు ఎలా చేసామంటే మనం see whatever you feel comfortable, but we read first the whole act as it is, and then Vadina was giving explanation about that paragraph anamata. Either that way, whatever you feel comfortable, Chanti.
ఇదేమైందంటే లాస్ట్ టైం నువ్వు స్లైడ్ షో ప్రిపేర్ చేశాను, గుర్తుందా? స్లైడ్ షో ప్రిపేర్ చేస్తే ఇదే నేను సేమ్ ఇది చదివాను. గీత కూడా ఏమందంటే, గీత ఏఎంబి సెంటర్ విజయవాడలో చూసింది నేను పోస్ట్ చేశాను. చాలా బాగుందని ఇదే ప్రజెంట్ చేయమంది. తర్వాత నీకు కూడా నచ్చింది కదా, నువ్వు రాసావు కూడా.
యా,
ఏంటి అది చదవమంటారా? అది చదవడం అంటే నాకు మళ్ళా కొత్త కదా.
రవి,
ఇది
మై పాయింట్ ఐ వాంట్ టు టెల్ యూ. ఒక్క నిమిషం, గివ్ మీ 1 minute. ఏమవుతుందంటే వెన్ షీ వాజ్ రీడింగ్ ఫస్ట్ పేరా, అదర్స్ ఆర్ ఎక్స్ప్రెసింగ్ దేర్ ఒపీనియన్ లాస్ట్ పేరా వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు. ఆ పేరాకి స్టిక్ అవటంలే. నౌ లైక్ Chanti gives whole chapter presentation. We can ask any question, we can do. That is what I feel. ఇప్పుడు లాస్ట్ పేరా అది ముందుకు వచ్చేసి ఆ ఫస్ట్ పేరా దగ్గర దేర్ ఎక్స్ప్రెసింగ్ కదా, ఇది అప్ అండ్ డౌన్ అది అయిపోతుంది రీడింగ్. ఇది
చాలా జాగ్రత్తగా నేను ప్రిపేర్ చేశాను గీత.
చేయి Chanti.
ఎసెన్స్ ఆఫ్ హోల్ చాప్టర్ అన్నమాట.
ఓకే, some other books also has taken.
Let's proceed the same way. Chanti bhai నువ్వు ఎలా ప్రిపేర్ చేసావో let's proceed the same way.
కాదు, మొట్టమొదటి చదవమంటారా? ఏముంది చదవనా?
లేదు కాదు మై, however you prepared, let's proceed in the same way, no problem.
మళ్ళీ స్టార్టింగ్ చేసి చదివేస్తాను, ఏముంది. ఎందుకంటే ఇది ఫాలో అవుతున్నారేమో మీరు, ఇది చదువుతానని. బట్ యాక్చువల్ నువ్వు కూడా ఎండార్స్ చేసావు రవి. ఇది పంపిస్తే
but what would be,
carry on
one second Chanti, why, I mean, as Pawan and Geeta says, whatever you feel comfortable you can say that, but we are all having our books and we are trying to read as it is and then give an explanation of that. That's what I was thinking, Anmata. But whatever you feel comfortable, because there are some more small details. There are some more small details which I thought is very important, Anmata. Every sentence has got a very good continuation to another point.
చాలా పెద్ద ఇది అయిపోతుంది కదా. ఇది లాస్ట్ టైం నేను ప్రెజెంట్ చేశాను. నువ్వు ఇది కూడా స్లైడ్స్ కూడా నువ్వు ఏంద్ర ఇది నేను ఫర్ టుడే ఇది నేను మొత్తం దాని ఇదంతా the whole essence.
Let's just continue. Chanti bhai, let's continue in the way we planned. Let's proceed. I agree with you. Malli anta chadwal kuda ante it takes time also. Let's go with your preparation
wherever you left.
Okay,
మళ్ళీ మొట్టమొదటి చదువుతాను, ది డైనమిక్స్ ఆఫ్ స్పిరిచువల్.
ఎక్కడ స్టాప్ చేసావో కానీ చదువు రవి.
చదువుతాను ఎందుకంటే కొంచెం బ్రేక్ అయింది కదా, కన్ఫ్యూజన్ కూడా ఉండదు. కంప్లీట్ గా ఇదే వినండి.
ఓకే.
ది డైనమిక్స్ ఆఫ్ స్పిరిచువల్ అడ్వాన్స్మెంట్. Spiritual advancement begins when there is a radical change in the outlook of the worldly person. The worldly individual lives mostly for the body. For example, he lives to eat, but he does not eat to live. He has not yet discovered any purpose clearly transcending body. So the body and its comforts become the center of all his pursuits. బాగా ఉందా? వినిపిస్తుంది కదా? బాగా వినిపిస్తుంది కదా? But when he discovers values in which the soul is predominant, the body is at once relegated to the background. The maintenance of the body then becomes for him merely an instrument for the realization of a higher purpose. His body, which had formerly been a hindrance to the true spiritual life, becomes an instrument for the release of the higher life. At this stage, the person attends to his body, needs with no special feeling of self-identification, like the driver of a car who fills it with fuel and water so that it may be kept going. Though he may be stirred by the pull of incomprehension and irresistible divine destiny, it may take a long time before he arrives at the mountain top of the truth realization, and the path is constantly strewn with pitfalls and slippery events. Even if a person has succeeded in scaling great heights, the slightest mistake on his part might cast him down to the very beginning again. Therefore, the aspirant is never safe unless he has the advantage of the help and guidance of a perfect master who knows the ins and outs of the spiritual path and who can not only safeguard the aspirant from a possible fall but lead him to the goal of realization without unnecessary lapses. The aspirant who attempts to reach the goal carries with him all the samskaras he has accumulated in the past, but the intensity of his spiritual longing, they remain suspended and ineffective for the time being. Time and again, however, when there is a slackening of the spiritual effort, the samskaras hitherto suspended from action gather fresh strength, constitute formidable obstacles in the spiritual advancement of the aspirant. So now, the analogy of a river. The powerful current of the river carries with its great quantities of silt from the source and the banks. As long as the quantities are suspended in the water, they do not hinder the flow of the river, though they may slow it down. When the current becomes slower, the bulk tends to deposit in the river bed and form huge islands. These not only obstruct the current, but often divert it or even split into smaller streams, and on the whole weakens the flow of mighty river, or again when the river is in flood, it sweeps away all the obstacles of the trees, bushes, and rubbish in its path. But when they accumulate to a certain degree, they can constitute a serious hindrance in the flow of the river. In the same way, the path of spiritual advancement is often blocked by the obstacles of its own creation, and these can be removed by the help of the master. Egoism must disappear. The help of the master is most effective when the aspirant surrenders his ego life in favor of unlimited life that the master represents. Complete self-surrender is most difficult to achieve, and yet the most essential condition of the spiritual advancement is the decreasing of the egoism to its minimum. It is therefore most necessary for the aspirant to keep free from the idea, I do this, I do that. Treading the spiritual path is not like riding a saddle horse, but walking on the sharp edge of the sword. Treading spiritual path, however, requires utmost carefulness, since the path affords no halting places or room for expansion of the ego life. Next, constructing new ego subservient to the master. Before beginning anything, the aspirant thinks that it is not he who is doing it, but the master who is getting it done through him. After doing the task, he does not claim the results of an action or enjoy them, but becomes free of them by offering them to the master. By training his mind in his spirit, he succeeds in creating new ego, which though only provisional, this new ego is spiritually harmless, since it derives its life and being from the master who represents infinity. And when the time comes, it can be thrown away like a garment. There are two types of ego. One that can only add to the limitations of the soul, and the other that helps it towards the construction of the new ego entirely subservient to the master is indispensable to the dynamics of spiritual advancement. This sudden transition to the egoless life is impossible. The aspirant has been accustomed to derive just in life from his limited ego, and immediate transition from the life egoistic action to that of egoless action is impossible on one's own and also not advisable. This is the reason why in most cases spiritual advancement has to be very gradual and often takes several lives. When the ego is entirely subservient to the master, it is not only spiritually harmless and indispensable and directly contributed to the spiritual advancement of the aspirant, because it brings him closer to the master through the life of selfless service and love. Need for recurring contact with master. The aspirant who enlists in the service of the master may be compared to a broom with which the master sweeps the world clean of its impurities. The broom is bound to accumulate dirt of the world, and unless cleaned again and again and given a new tone, it becomes less efficient in the course of time. Only through the spiritual intervention of the master can such spiritual disorders be cured. The recurring contact with the master is the most necessary throughout the process of spiritual advancement. The master helps the aspirant in his own invincible ways, which have no parallel in the ways of the world, if the aspirant is to be the recipient of the self. He must take a real effort to surrender himself to the divine will of the master. Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Mai. Jai Baba, Mai. Jai Baba. Okay. Jai Baba, Mai. You've summarized the chapter in a very concise fashion. That's very good. So, Jai Baba. We'll go through a round of discussion. First, some clarifications and questions. And then after that, I think we will have time to just have a general discussion as well on this topic. So first, I will ask maybe Atta, Shakuntala, to start with any points or any clarifications.
Start it from afterwards. I shall ask.
Okay, Atta. Prabhakar, Mai? Any points from your side, Mai?
చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్ పాయింట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. మనం గోల్ ఆఫ్ లైఫ్ అంటే మన సెన్స్ ఎంజాయ్మెంట్ గురించి మనం ఇచ్చేస్తుంటాం అంతే కదా. బాడీ కావాలంటే ఇప్పుడు వేస్తున్నాను అంటే డ్రెస్ వాటికి ఇంపార్టెంట్. భోజనం చేసేటప్పుడు మనం ఏంటి బతకడానికి తినాలి, కానీ తినడానికి రకరకాల వెరైటీస్ కావాలన్నమాట. డిజైర్స్ అంటారు అన్నమాట. అలాగా ప్రతిదానికి సౌండ్స్, మ్యూజిక్ కావాలి, వాసన సెంట్ కావాలి, ఇలాగనమాట. ఇవన్నీ మనిషి గోల్ ఆఫ్ లైఫ్ ఏంటి అనేది జాగ్రత్తగా చూసుకొని మనం చివరికి మస్ట్ అడ్వాన్స్ ఇన్ అవర్ లైఫ్, నాట్ ఫర్ మనీ ఆర్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఆర్ ఎనీథింగ్, ఫర్ బాడీ ఎంజాయ్మెంట్. అది నేను అండర్స్టాండ్ చేసుకుంటున్నాను కదా. మస్ట్ మనం ఈ లైఫ్ లోకి వచ్చామంటే మస్ట్ అడ్వాన్స్ లైఫ్ లో కొద్దిగా. బట్ ఎక్కువ ఇంపార్టెన్స్ మనం ఏం చేస్తామంటే బాడీకి నేమో ఫేమో పవర్ ఎక్కువ ఇస్తుంటాం. అది కాకుండా బాబా గారి పాత్ మనకి ఈ పాత్ర వెళ్ళాలని చెప్పారు కాబట్టి యు మస్ట్ గో ఇన్ దట్ పాత్. Very good subject. చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్ పాయింట్స్ మన థియరీ కాదు, ప్రాక్టికల్గా ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడానికి ట్రై చేయాలి.
Okay. Jai Baba, Mai. Thank you. Okay. Amma, you want to go next?
Jai Baba. Baba said about spirituality, and the true spirituality signifies the internal renunciation of mundane desires. Mere external renunciation does not lead to spirituality. And a different context lo chepparu. Okay. Spirituality is a thing to be experienced and lived. It makes you firm like a rock. Neither worldly sorrows nor pleasures upset you. You attain the state where no desires remain and you want nothing. When you do not want anything, you have everything. Papa says spirituality is so simple, but the Pandits, priests, Vedanthists have given it so many names and aspects, filling up pages and pages of volumes after volumes with dry philosophy. Ordinary people are puzzled as what to accept and what to reject, what to do, what not to do. It has assumed such an aspect and has given to such a degree that anything simple given as practice to spiritual aspirant is not taken seriously. It is taken lightly and rejected, so that even masters have put up some polished coating on these simple things to appear solemn, serene, and dignified. Meher Baba explained to a reporter in the American report, what is the spiritual path? What are the criteria for one being on the path? When you begin to think of yourself as you being on the path, then you are not. The path is not defined direction set apart from yourself. It begins and ends within yourself. It is not so much more of a path added, but so much less of the veil of ignorance. In short, the path is I want nothing. Another thing in this discourse I like, provisional ego. Baba used Kartrutva Baba, that is in Bhagavad Gita word. Everything God is doing through me. That point, very attracted me. So whatever, if it's a failure also, that is because of God's will. Okay, if you succeed, His will. Something gone wrong, God's will. That thing, when given the responsibility, that everything goes, His designs are different. And Baba said in Baba's words, I take you blindfolded. Number of times we cited this example. I'll take you in my train, non-stop train. You add to my engine. I'll take you wherever you are, whatever you are. When we are doing that Katrita Baba, provisional ego, God is doing through me. Everything happens according to His will. So He will take us blindfolded. Actually, Nageshwar Garu gave one beautiful example. When we are going with our parents, suppose going to some other station, let us say to Delhi. So when we are going to Delhi, the father, mother, they'll take care of everything, whom to ask, what to do, what to take, everything. And as a children, we are enjoying in the train, whatever they are giving the food, eating and enjoying. Because they have the responsibility and they take us like that. Baba, as a compassionate father, we will take his to the destination when you catch hold of his daman with 100% conviction. That is what I wanted to say. Jai Baba.
Here, parents takes place the place of Sadguru role.
Father,
Is it
compassion. Vadina?
Parents' role is Sadguru's role.
Sadguru. Sadguru or avatar, he will take us to the destination when we catch hold of the feet of the avatar, means a shortcut he will take. And Sadgurus also equal to avatar, God only. Okay. And
Yes.
when we are perfect masters, when catch hold of. And another thing Baba said, if you suppose on the way some saints, no, they don't know till the realization. Halfway through, they leave you on the path. So don't catch hold of these ordinary saints and all. Those who catch hold of perfect masters, avatars, they will take you to the destination when you catch hold of the feet of Sadguru, a perfect master avatar. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba Ma. Okay. Well spoken also. Some key points you have mentioned also. That's very good. I'll pass it on to Ravi Mai. Ravi Mai?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are a lot of very important points in this chapter on Mata. And then we need to really slowly imbibe them. I'll just bring out 3 points. I think one point Geeta already mentioned, provisional ego. But before that, at one time, before we stepped into this spirituality, we were on our own. Kada? We were on our own and we were just following whatever our mind and our sanskaras direct us to do. Even now, that is the situation. Even now, our sanskaras dictate how to go with our life. But what we are doing, being in the spiritual path, we are modifying, we are trying to change anamata. The first the first 2 paragraphs, that's what he's saying. Baba saying, the message I got from these 2 points is we have to take it very seriously, spirituality. Otherwise, sometime being in spiritual life, sometime being on our own, that doesn't work out. So what is that? Why we are being on our own? Because of our likes and dislikes. They play a prominent role in our life. Because those strength of the sanskaras of I like this, I don't like this are very strong. That is why we are not able to be in the spiritual path. That is what we have to modify. Because you can go up to the top of the mountain, but even single action that is not spiritual can bring you back to the bottom of the mountain. That's what Baba says. That's one point. The second point ఏంటంటే how we have to do anything అనేది క్లియర్గా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేశారు కదా. ఇక్కడ ఎక్కడ చేశారంటే కన్స్ట్రక్టింగ్ న్యూ ఈగో సబ్సర్వియంట్ యూ మాస్టర్. దట్స్ వాట్ గీత వాస్ సేయింగ్. వీ హ్యావ్ టు హ్యావ్ ప్రొవిజనల్ ఈగో. సో వెనెవర్ వీఆర్ డూయింగ్ ఎనీథింగ్, ఇట్ ఈస్ బాబా హూ ఈస్ డూయింగ్ ఇట్ అనేసి చేయాలా. అండ్ వీ హ్యావ్ టు డూ ఏ వెరీ గుడ్ జాబ్. And we have to please Baba. And then after doing the job, we have to think we have done for Baba and we give all the results to him. If we do this, we will make a big stride in our spiritual advancement. Because we are not doing that, right? I mean, maybe some of us are doing, some of us are not doing. If we don't do it, we collect and again these experiences, and the experiences make us to be back in the regular flow. Those are the 2 points, but there are a lot more important points, but I'm not going to take much time. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba Mai.
Keep
Jai
saying
Baba.
some important points means you can continue. That's what my opinion.
See,
Any other points, Mai? Yeah.
It takes more time to go through more points. I think if we go slowly rather than giving complete gist of this chapter, if we slowly read, then we can catch and have discussion, just like how we did it with Sakuntala Dina. But that's okay, we can do it later. Jai Baba.
Okay, Jai Baba Mai. I'll pass it on to Kiran. Would you like to add something?
Mute lo now.
Mute Jay. Unmute. Kiran, we can't hear you. Come on, Chappu. Can you hear?
I think we can't hear you, Kiran. Can you hear us? Put your thumbs up if you can hear us.
Udaram left ante
Oh, he's left us.
He'll join again.
He'll join again. In the meanwhile, Atta?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute for some reason. I just left the meeting and came back. Can you hear me?
Go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
now?
we can
I
hear
could
you.
not
We
unmute
can hear
before.
you.
I don't know why. Okay. Nice. Clear guy, as always, read it very clearly, whatever he was conveying. It was good. I felt the topic, I was trying to understand the main gist of the topic. I feel a little scattered in my own head about the topic itself. Eat to live, live to eat. That is very clear. The parts of the ego and the master is clear as in word. The words are clear. Now, how it all comes together, I'm not able to see so clearly still. So maybe that's where the slow reading and presentation will be more interesting. I was trying to follow the text on the words and what is being conveyed. So maybe just a request. If you are using presentation mode, then it's better not to put the text up. Because it's confusing on in Naku. I mean, that's not the main reason. Also, the concept is a little heavy. So that's all. Nothing much to add. I'll read the chapter separately myself again, just to get the essence of it a little better. Yeah.
Okay. No worries, Kiran. And I think agree that I think we have both until previously we used to give the summary or presentation, prepare presentations or give a summary. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
And you're right. Kani entante this chapter, at least I felt it was a simpler chapter to understand, but very, very powerful, like what Ravimai had mentioned earlier in the beginning of the session. He was saying very powerful chapter. Some chapters, discourses, I felt it was sometimes it's a little complicated language and difficult to understand. Now, each chapter I found it simpler to understand, and so when you read it, I think you will be able to put the things together. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to do that a little
bit. What is special about this chapter? I couldn't see it.
When I come to my turn, I'll talk. I'll talk about that.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll just pass it on to Shakuntalata, and then I can try to give at least my version of a very quick summary. If I can. I know Chadwanidi, Roju, so that's why I'm able to probably give a quick summary.
Yeah.
I think between Ravimai and Amma, what they've spoken is actually summarizes it. But I'll when I come to my turn, I'll speak. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
I'll first pass it on to Atta. Atta, you want to talk anything, Atta?
Yes. Here, Baba mentioned egoism, how it will disappear, and different types of egoism. How a Sadguru or a master will help to get rid of this egoism, and how we are free from this egoism, and what are the latter effects of it. These are mainly Baba told here about the egoism. First chapter is first subheading, subjugation of the body for higher life. We are thinking that eating and taking care of our body and etc. These are worldly things. They are nothing to do for the spiritual life. Then how we can go to the spiritual life? This is not taking care of the body and desires. We are taking care of the desires is not a spiritual life. Body is only a vehicle. A vehicle is the example Baba gave, that car, driving of a car. Car is like our body. It needs only petrol and water. Driver took some petrol and water for it to maintain. So the body is only an instrument here. Then real thing is not this one. To gain the spiritual advancement, body is only an instrument, and we shall take the Sadguru's help or a master's help. So this is about our car, how he gave an example for it. Then quest for the goal. Quest for the goal means there is so many things are like that. We can go a deep and thorough study for these questions. Is it Mupawar? Ravi?
Correct, Atta.
ఏంటోదినా ఏమన్నారు వదినా?
Here, first paragraph, subjugation of the body for a higher life. Under this heading, under the body is only an instrument like a car. Car needs only some petrol and water. And later, our body is also like that instrument only. We can use the body to gain spiritual benefits, but not body is our real thing. It is only a vehicle only. He told like that in the subjugation of the body for higher life. So we shall, by paragraph, we can learn more. Like that only.
We do it next time,
Egoism.
Vadina, like that.
Egoism.
If you want to continue the same chapter, we can continue.
Sir. So that is the thing, Pawan. So we can tell about the egoism. There are 4 subheadings for this. And how can we get rid of the egoism? And how a Sadguru will help for it. Very correct.
Correct, Atta.
వదినా నా పేరు ఇస్తారా ఏంటన్నా?
Just 1 second.
ఓకే.
ఈగోయిజం నుంచి మనం ఎలాగా ఎస్కేప్ అవ్వగలం, ఈగోయిజం ఎలా మాడిఫై అవుతుంది, రకరకాల ఈగోయిజం చెప్పారు బాబా గారు. ఈ రకరకాల ఈగోయిజం నుంచి మనం ఎట్లా బయటపడతాం, దాని గురించి ఎక్కువగా మాట్లాడదాం. ఈ చాప్టర్ లో అదే మెయిన్ గా చెప్పారు. మస్ట్ డిసప్పియర్. How it will disappear. Geeta, tell.
వదినా, మీరు చెప్పిన దానికి బాబా దీంట్లో బ్యూటిఫుల్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్. when river is flowing ఫోర్స్ గా సడన్ గా సిల్ట్ దాంతో డెల్టాస్ ఏర్పడుతుంటాయి, దెన్ ఇట్ స్లోస్ డౌన్. అవి మన లైఫ్ ని కంపేర్ చేశారు. బ్యూటిఫుల్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ హ్యాస్ గివెన్. చంటి, డిడ్ యు రీడ్ దట్? ఈ బెంగళూరు విజయవాడ దీంట్లో వేసాడు తనే చంటి ఇదంతా. వెన్ చూడండి స్లో డౌన్ అయ్యి స్మాల్ రివర్లెట్స్ లా అయిపోతాయి. అగైన్ ఇట్ గోస్ ఇన్ టు ఫోర్స్ అనమాట. మన లైఫ్ కూడా అలాగా సంస్కార బికమింగ్ ఎ బిగ్ ఆబ్స్టికల్స్ ఇన్ బిట్వీన్. అది చాలా మంచి వెరీ గుడ్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీరు చెప్పారు చూడు వదిన. దానికి he gave in this chapter అనమాట. ఓకే, జై బాబా.
జై బాబా అత్త, జై బాబా అమ్మ. Mai, you want to say something else, or should I first speak and then you would like to add, or you want to speak?
నువ్వు చెప్పు పవన్.
Okay. So I'll try to respond a little bit to Kiran. Okay, Kiran, you're there? Mainly I'm trying to respond to you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, Kiran. So see, basically, first thing is this chapter is about spiritual advancement, and Baba is talking about what is the main parameters, or what are the metrics, or what is the key things that I can play around with in order to advance spiritually. Okay, what is the metrics, or what is the variable that can be influenced in order to advance spiritually? Okay, if you look at it mathematically, what is the x and y that I can focus on in order to advance spiritually? Okay, so far with me? So that's what this particular chapter is about. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things about discourses, at least my experience, and I think Ravi Mai was mentioning it before you came actually to the call, is repetition of Baba's teachings. Even I felt the same way, Ravi Mai, and I think Atta was mentioning it to you, and I also was, when you were telling it earlier, kada naku in my mind I was saying exactly true. As we keep reading these statements, initially elaganipistundi Kiran is I feel it's Baba garu same simple point, he keeps twisting and turning and repeating the same points and confuses us. Ani initially that's my perception anamata, because even simple points he will put it in different permutation combinations and then confuses the hell out of me, Initially I used to feel that way. Kani with repetitive reading, I'm getting more and more insights and clarity actually in the mind, is what I've experienced in the past few things. Okay. Kani, if you have to if you have to kind of crystallize most of the different chapters or different points, it boils down to three concepts, actually, is my view. Okay. It boils down to sanskaras, desires, and ego. These three things, you take anything that, at least so far, what I have read, and I have not read so much like many others in this call and outside also. I'm not so well read. Kani, whom firke antare, finally, right? It comes down to these three areas: sanskaras, desires, which are created due to the sanskaras, and at the backdrop of the ego that keeps pulling us back to I. Okay, so these three things, anything that Baba talks about tends to can be correlated to any of one of these three or all three of these topics. So even this chapter is not very different. Okay, so we have our sanskaras. These sanskaras create desires. Based on these desires, we keep doing our life. And we live, most of us, all of us, live in our body. Our body seems, we relate to our body and we relate to our mind. Okay. And we think we are our mind and we think we are our body. And we are less connected to our soul, which is what is ultimately needed to ultimately keep progressing spiritually. Okay, so that's the first thing when we talks about we live to eat versus eat to live. That is the analogy about that fundamental point, that we are very focused on our bodies, our sensibilities associated with the bodies, as driven and influenced by the sanskaras. Okay, so this is the issue. What Baba is also saying, next point, is that spiritual advancement is when we go beyond our body and get more and more connected to our soul, is what Baba says. Okay. But coming in between these two things, right? Between our body, living within our body, and going and getting connected more to our souls, is a big issue, is ego. Okay. Ego is the main problem. Okay. Because our ego will always pull us away from our souls and bring us back to our bodily sensibilities or desires and things like that. Okay. So this is the problem. So one very big part of this chapter is a dilemma. There's a fundamental dilemma that on the one hand, if I do any activity, we go to a vegetable market, I want to buy tomatoes, that vegetable vendor has acted a little rudely or is not refusing to give me the price at which I want. Ego comes into the way and it makes me behave in a certain fashion with that vegetable vendor. Correct? So ego keeps coming in the way. So one problem is if I do any activity, ego comes in the way. On the other hand, I can go to the other extreme of the spectrum and not to indulge in any activity, completely renounce all activity. But that is not going to help us. It's like a vicious catch-22 situation, Kiran. Vicious cycle, anmata. If I do not go through my ego and live my life as I am meant to live, I cannot get rid of the ego as well. I have to go through my life. I have to leverage my ego. And through that process, I will eventually get independent or liberated from this ego. And when I get liberated from this ego, I will eventually get God realization, or I'll become one with God. So it's a catch-22 situation. On the one hand, the moment I try to do something, ego comes into way. If I don't do any activity, then I can never get rid of the ego as well. I get stuck. Okay, so this is one big area. And Baba, now with this dilemma, Baba says, no, you should do your all activities. You should live your life. You have to be doing all your responsibilities. In my wish also, he refers to that, correct? That we have to do our responsibilities, our day-to-day responsibilities we have to do. Now, how do we do this? Right? Because ego will keep coming in the way. I do something, I will feel, wow, I'm the great guy, I did it. Any problem comes, we will be blaming 10,000 people except ourselves. We won't take accountability for our life. We'll be blaming other people, right? So this ego will keep coming in the way. He's given a beautiful concept of provisional ego. Provisional ego essentially is, think of it as put it as a bucket where if something good happens, we do something good. I went and prepared for an exam and I got number one ranking in that exam. Yeah. Then one way of thinking, which is natural, is I worked hard. I am so cool. I am so intelligent. I got number one ranking, which is a very egocentric way. Second is Jai Baba or Jai Rama, Jai Sai Baba, Jai Krishna. They used me, right, as a channel to deliver whatever was to be delivered. right? So in a way, you attribute that to Baba or Rama or Krishna or a higher consciousness. Okay. Second is something negative happens, right? What happens? Let us say we went and failed in that exam. There also we will say, Intra, I don't have any brains, or these exams are all so difficult, or they are blah blah blah. Okay, other people are cheating and doing well in the exams, whatever. There might be different interpretations we might do. What we have to then put it back to the provisional ego, where we are not going to make ourselves down. Even putting ourselves down is an egoistic thing, actually. Okay, it's an ego-driven thing. So there we say, this is what I did my best, and Baba, this is what he needed from me. Maybe there is a higher learning out of this situation. I have to work harder and be able to deliver that exam again, or something else. But basically, you're detaching yourself from the actions and doing what is needed and leaving the outcome to the higher God. So that is the concept of provisional ego. And the third big concept in this chapter is about surrender, which is where you now say that if you really want to empower this concept of provisional ego, the starting point of that is to say that you're holding fast to Baba's Daman, right? You surrender yourself to a perfect master, whoever that perfect master is for you, and you say that I'm going to do and live my life to the fullest. I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to do whatever is best within my capacity. The rest I leave it to you. Whatever comes, whatever outcome comes, good or bad, suffering or enjoyment, is something up to you. I'm holding fast to your Daman. I know you will ultimately take care of me. So when you take this construct of this, you are spiritually advancing, is what Baba is saying in this chapter. Even within this spiritual advancement, sometimes we have very spiritually strong moments in life where you're neutralizing your sanskaras in that period of time. Okay. There are within that journey times when you become spiritually weak because circumstances hit you, you get distracted, for whatever reasons you become spiritually weak. Then what happens? The sanskaras come and take over you again. Okay. So that's another point that was mentioned. So yeah, this is sort of a quick summary of whatever I understood of the thing. Kiran, does that give some more perspective? Sorry, I took a little longer time because I'm the moderator. I have all the
That
right.
Delta, Baba gave the example